For the first time in the 2024 season, the Raiders are going streaking after their win over the New Orleans Saints. That plus more on Monday's edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast for December 30th, 2024.
You are Locked On Raiders, your daily Las Vegas Raiders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome in, Raider Nation, to another edition of the Locked On Raiders podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen of the day. We definitely appreciate you, whether you're catching us wherever you find your favorite podcast or you're checking us out on the YouTube page. We definitely appreciate it. Either way, the show continues to grow each and every day. And no matter what the overall record of the team is, Raider Nation always shows up and shows out and answers the call when it comes to the podcast. So we definitely appreciate that. If you are checking out our YouTube page, big ups to my man Ari, who does a fantastic job each and every day, making sure we're on YouTube, we're looking good, and we're sounding good. So we appreciate him. We shout him out. He's on Twitter at Ari Produces. I'm on Twitter as well, at your boy Q254. And of course, we got the Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Plenty of feedback to get to. I'll try to get as many calls and texts in. A lot of different ranges of thoughts, emotions, feelings, just a whole lot of kind of all over the place when it comes to the feelings on this team right now currently as they sit there at 4-12 after a victory over the Saints on Sunday. So we'll get those calls and texts there in segment number 3. Segment number 2, it's continuing to be evaluation season. There were some players that I was looking for to see what they were going to do in the game on Sunday against the Saints, and continue to look at some other players that are trying to state a case for sticking around, being on the team long term, like next year and beyond, getting contract extensions and more. And a lot of different players showed up and showed out, even though it was on a very short type of arrangement, as they didn't even get into New Orleans till about 1 in the morning because they had plane issues in Las Vegas. So they were out there competing. It was an early kickoff, 10 a.m. Pacific time, and the Raiders found a way to get a dub. So we'll talk about the players that really stood out to me in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Here is segment number 1, news and notes of the day, and we just really go over the game. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. And again, the Raiders get the 25-10 victory over the Saints. They're now 4-12 on the season. And I'll say this again, the Raiders did not get into New Orleans till very late, or I guess early if the way you're looking at it, right? 1 a.m. around, New Orleans time, Central time is when they arrived in there, and then their game was supposed to kick off at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So I believe it was about a 10 hours that they were there in town, something like that. I don't know exactly the time. I know it was all messed up. Let's put it like that. But I know when they took the field on Sunday, it was less than 12 hours since they had arrived in town. So they had some issues, but they didn't have any issues on the field. The way that they went out there and balled out, Aiden O'Connell looked really good. I got to give Aiden O'Connell a lot of credit. 20 for 35, 242 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Another game where the Raiders did not turn the ball over. See what happens when you don't turn the ball over. You look really good, right? And I've been telling anyone who will listen, I do a lot of different interviews, and I did a ton of different interviews leading up to the Saints game. And I kept telling anyone that would listen was that, the Raiders defense plays really well. And for the most part, it keeps them in every single game. And then at some point, the train goes off the track because, they're just on the field too much, or there's turnovers that happen, and they're just backbreakers. But for the most part, I told everyone the defense is really the strength of this team. And you started to see them play the last couple of weeks. And I know they're bad teams they're playing against, the Jaguars and the Saints are just as beat up as the Raiders are. But for the last couple of weeks, you've actually seen the defense, kind of the identity that Antonio Pierce thought this team was going to have, start to show up. Right, that defensive approach that he thought they were going to have all season long, where they didn't really have that same approach all year. They weren't able to create turnovers. They created another couple turnovers on Sunday. They were able to get to the quarterback multiple times. And again, they do the heavy lifting. They're flying around. They're out there just, again, balling. I mean, that's the best way to put it. They're playing some really good ball for Patrick Graham. So O'Connell had a good day, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Brock Bowers, another big day, 7 catches, 77 yards. He has 108 catches now in the season, 1,144 yards and 4 touchdowns. All are records, and he's on his way to break more records. Jacoby Myers is a guy that I was looking out for. 5 catches, 61 yards and a touchdown. He's got 904 yards on the season. Even Trey Tucker got involved and got a touchdown. Interceptions-wise and just defense in general, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions. Jack Jones, a guy that I was pointing out, said, hey, I would like to see him have a big game, a good game. He did. Thomas Harper, a newcomer to the team, he had an interception. Spillane, Chase on, they checked the box again for sacks. And then they had 1 sack each. And then Tyree, Harper, Butler, Andre Carter II, they all had a half a sack as well. So 4 sacks and 2 interceptions. And again, just a really good overall team effort from the Raiders, offensively, defensively, special teams. They did have another special teams, mix up or mistake on the extra point attempt where they had it blocked. So that's something that's become a problem more times than not, which is still very unusual to see a special teams error like that. But A.J. Cole looked like he was the A.J. Cole of old, punting the ball really well, had an opportunity, punted one that was like 70-something yards. It ended up going into the end zone, though. It looked like they were going to be able to down it on the 1-yard line, but he was back doing his thing. So just an overall really good game. And again, the Saints are not some juggernaut team. They're not a team that's going to the playoffs. They're trying to get to the finish line just like the Raiders. But for the team that was out there, the Raiders went out there and put their best foot forward and really had a dominating victory over the Saints that probably should have been even more than 25-10. It could have been even higher of a score. But, they just did, I thought, a really good job. Overall record improving now to 4-12 on the season. I did want to point out here in segment number 1, little news and notes. Nate Hobbs, he played on Sunday. He played about 41 snaps, but Tashawn Reed from The Athletic pointed out on Twitter, he said Raiders cornerback Nate Hobbs missed last week's game with the illness, was hospitalized Thursday and after it developed into pneumonia, according to a league source. He missed practice Wednesday and Thursday, but returned to practice on Friday and played 41 snaps on Sunday. That is no joke. Right? I mean, all of a sudden, Nate Hobbs comes down with pneumonia, and that's why it was all of a sudden he popped up on the injury report. I thought that was kind of strange, but I didn't know what was going on. So to find out that it was pneumonia, and look, that's just what Ricky Henderson just passed away from, right? Was pneumonia. And obviously there's different levels to the game, but it's good that they were able to get him taken care of real quick, and he was able to bounce back and to the point where he played. And look, if he had pneumonia and was in the hospital on Wednesday and Thursday or whatever the case may be, and he didn't play, I wouldn't have blamed him at all. But for him to go out there and play and had some pretty decent plays, I thought he made on Sunday, some pretty physical tackles, and that's who he is. So it was good to see him out there, and then to find out after the game that he actually had been hospitalized for pneumonia. That's a real big deal as far as I'm concerned. Also, and we'll get into, highlighting some of these players coming up in segment number 2. I did want to pass along some sound that I collected over the weekend from some different NFL insiders on these different shows that they're doing. One was Tom Pelissero from the NFL Network. He was talking with Ian Rappaport, Rap Sheet, and they were talking about different storylines in the league and, what to look for. And Tom Pelissero brought up the Raiders and brought up Antonio Pierce. And, of course, that's going to be a hot conversation all this week and then leading up to Black Monday, regardless what happens with AP or not. But it's clear that there's not really anyone with a great understanding of what's going to happen. But right now it seems like and sounds like a lot of folks are leading to the point of Antonio Pierce being a one-and-done coach. Here's Tom Pelissero.
Ian, Raiders owner Mark Davis was fired up in the locker room after his team snapped a 10-game losing streak last week. But my understanding, based on conversations with people around the league, is that Antonio Pierce's future as head coach remains in serious doubt. Davis has said only that he will evaluate everything after the season. His new minority owner, Tom Brady, has never been a part of anything like 3-12 and has been speaking with various people about how to get it fixed. Also, the Raiders' biggest star player, Max Crosby, who has said he wants to be a Raider for life, also wants to win and is going to be watching very closely to see what steps they take to make that happen. Of course, Brady's got a lot of connections around the league, including his former teammate, Mike Vrabel, who is going to be a hot head coaching candidate in this cycle, Mike.
So that's what Tom Pelissero had to say about Antonio Pierce. And again, just from the people that he was talking around the league, I mean, you heard what he said. Sounds like that AP is going to be one and done. Again, we won't find out until we find out, till the season gets wrapped up. AP was asked about his coach, his job security after the game on Sunday, and he declined to answer the question. I don't think there's anything for him to say, right? I mean, what is he going to say at this stage of the game? I mean, it is what it is. Either the decision is already been made or it's going to be made when it's all over. So at this point, there's really nothing he could say. But Diana Rossini from The Athletic, she does a podcast with Chase Daniel, and she was talking about Tom Brady, and that's another scenario that's added to the mix for the Raiders. What kind of role does he play for this team moving forward? So here's Diana Rossini from The Athletic talking about what she's understanding Tom Brady's role is going to be.
What I've learned recently is it's not just going to be Tom Brady's thoughts on the quarterback position, which would make sense, right? Let's ask the greatest quarterback of all time his thoughts on that position, but really how involved Tom Brady is going to be in everything that has to do with the Las Vegas Raiders, right? So they're going to have to make a decision about their head coach with Antonio Pierce. I've talked to people around the league who believe that this is going to probably be it. I think Tom Brady's going to have a big hand in helping Mark Davis navigate the next steps here.
So does that mean they're going to skew toward a guy like Vrabel, or a guy that has played with or that Brady knows more often? I mean, that's usually how these things go, right?
Yeah, that would make sense, but I don't necessarily think that that's the only coach that they would be talking to, obviously.
There's Diana Rossini, again, one of the best in the business, along with Tom Pelissero. You heard from him earlier. And, these are folks that are talking to everyone that's kind of in the know, that knows what's going on. And you see that Mike Vrabel's name keeps popping up with both of these guys, with both, reporters, Pelissero and Rossini. And obviously Mike Vrabel's name is the hot name. We'll see if that happens. I will say this is something that I found to be interesting. And I was actually on ESPN radio on Friday, and we were talking about this, is Mike McCarthy changed agents. His agent now is Don Yee. I'm just going to throw that out there. Again, I don't think that Mike McCarthy is a guy that's going to be in line to be a Raiders head coach if that position does open up. But anytime I think of Don Yee, only person I think of is Tom Brady. So I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there, leave it out there. We'll see how it all develops. I do believe Mike McCarthy is going to actually end up getting a contract extension with the Cowboys and staying there in Big D. But if he doesn't, just saying, don't be surprised if the fact that the Raiders job opens up, if it does open up, don't be surprised if he gets an interview. Because, again, Don Yee and Tom Brady, those guys go hand in hand. But coming up in segment number 2, evaluation season continues. It rolls on. So let's evaluate some of the players that stood up and really made plays, big-time plays, not only on Sunday, but down the stretch of the 2024 season. We'll do that in segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Before we get to that, though, I do want to tell you about one of our great sponsors here on the show, and that is Rocket Money. Has Rocket Money ever helped you find any subscriptions you forgot about that you were paying for twice? Well, that's happened. It happens to a lot of people. They've had subscriptions and didn't realize that they were paying for it, and Rocket Money made it easy for them to track it all down, get it all under control. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place. Whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year, Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to about $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. Right now, if you want to cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals, you can do it faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. Again, rocketmoney.com/lockedon. All right, Raider Nation, here we go. Segment number 2 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Want to continue rolling on with evaluation season, especially after the Raiders come off a victory 25-10 over the New Orleans Saints. Obviously, there was players that I was looking for going into the game, like Jack Jones and K'Lavon Chason, looking for Aiden O'Connell, wanted to see Jacoby Myers, wanted to see Brock Bowers. And it seems like just about everybody that I was really trying to pay attention to in this game showed up and showed out. Of course, Aiden O'Connell mentioned before, 20 for 35, 242 yards and 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. But what he did that I wanted to see was I wanted to see him, scan the field, go through progressions, not just hit the first read or else the check down. And that's what he had been doing to me. That's what it looked like he had been doing a lot. That's why you saw Amir Abdullah get a lot of catches the last few weeks. But in this game, he was, to me, looked like he was more comfortable, looked like he was, willing to stand in the pocket and scan the field, and he was delivering the ball down the field. Brock Bowers, again, had a monster game, 7 catches, 77 yards. He's up to 108 total catches on the season, 1,144 yards and 4 touchdowns. So he's incredible. But Jacoby Myers, a guy that I wanted to see get involved in the action, 5 catches for 61 yards and a touchdown, and he was targeted like 9 times. So, O'Connell was scanning the field. He was standing in there. He is making the best case of, hey, if I'm not the long-term future starting quarterback here, I could be the short-term future starting quarterback here. So meaning if the Raiders do find a way to draft their potential quarterback of the future next year, there's a good chance that Aiden O'Connell will be the starter in 2025, and he's making a case for that right now, saying, I can do this. I'm getting better, right? And basically, when this is all said and done, when this season is over, he'll basically had about a little bit over 1 full season of starting experience in the National Football League, even though his second year will be completed. So he's definitely making a case for himself. I know a lot of people are talking about, he should have been starting to begin with. Again, I caution everyone on that because we don't all know what went into the decision to start Gardner Minshew. I believe money had a lot to do with it because that happens all the time, and especially when neither one of the quarterbacks did anything in training camp to separate themselves. then I'm assuming that probably from the front office, from upstairs, right, they said, hey, go with the guy that we paid the money. And that's what they did. That's what I'm assuming that they did. Again, it's just an assumption. I don't know that. But, Again, I thought that O'Connell was going to get the start to start the season when AP named Gardner Minshew the starter. It was a little bizarre to me as well. But, I mean, you have to kind of deep dive and say, okay, so what probably went into that decision? So for me, the money had a lot to do with it as far as I'm concerned. But again, that's just an assumption on my part. But seeing what O'Connell was able to do on Sunday just gave me confidence that regardless whatever happens with the draft and the quarterback position, that this guy can start games for you, right? And especially if they do get that quarterback. And as I mentioned before, Tom Brady doesn't. He's not a fan of having rookie quarterbacks start right away. I would not be shocked to see Aiden O'Connell start in 2025. But Brock Bowers continues his monster season, 7 catches, 77 yards. He has 1,114 receiving yards this season. He passed Hall of Famer Mike Ditka, who only had 1,076 receiving yards back in 61 for the most receiving yards by a rookie tight end in NFL history. And his 108 receptions passed Puka Nacua, who had 105 last year for the most receptions by a rookie in NFL history. And to take it a step further, he's actually set the Raiders' record for most receptions in a single season, passing former tight end Darren Waller with 107 in 2020. The funny thing is that Malik Nabers is right behind Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is right up there with all those catches, 108, but he might not end up being the record holder when it's all said and done based off what Malik Nabers does in Week 18. Now, obviously, Brock Bowers will have an opportunity to extend his record and keep it going. But if he doesn't get the ball a lot and all of a sudden the Giants go feed Malik Nabers a lot, I mean, Malik Nabers is at 104 catches right now. So he's having a phenomenal season there in New York as well. How about this? This is a really cool one, and big shout out to Amir Abdullah. I've really appreciated the way he's been a big-time leader in the Raiders locker room and stepped up, and whenever they ask him to do anything, he's been there and has done it. And again, he holds himself very accountable. Like I said, he makes himself available in the locker room. Whenever we're there to talk, he'll always talk and tell us what happened in the game, win or loss. He's been a great dude, but he carried the rock on Sunday 20 times for 115 yards. He also had 3 catches for 32 yards. He has played 141 total games in his career. Got in the league in 2015. That was his first career game of 100-plus rushing yards. How cool is that? He's a 10-year vet, and he got his first 100-yard game. I thought that was really cool. And he was running. I mean, you want to talk about a dude running downhill, running strong. I liked what I was seeing from Sincere McCormick when he was having that opportunity early on until he hurt his ankle and went on IR. But, man, Amir Abdullah, and look, the Saints aren't very good at stopping the run. Ross Jackson told us about that on Thursday from Locked On Saints. He told us that, and I was like, well, the Raiders aren't very good at running the ball. Well, they ran the ball well on Sunday against New Orleans, and Amir Abdullah led the way. Again, 20 carries, 115 yards. First time in his career that he's gone over 100 yards rushing. That's really cool. Other guys continuing to step up. Isaiah Palamau, another big game. He was knocking the ball loose again. This is coming off the AFC Defensive Player of the Week award that he received for forcing 2 fumbles against Jacksonville. He didn't force any fumbles, but he forced a few incompletions, right? He's back there, and he's laying the wood, and they're all legal hits. That's the thing about it. He's not out there headhunting, and he's not out there in any kind of dirty shots or anything. He's out there with legal, perfect technique, just hitting the ball carrier at the right time and causing these balls to go incomplete. I mean, he is out there playing some really good ball. I don't know if he's going to be the starter in 2025, but there's no doubt that he's going to be in that conversation. And, of course, with Trayvon Merrick and Marcus Epps both being in contract years, they're free agents out there this year. There's a good chance that he could be a starting safety for the Raiders in 2025, but he's definitely making a name for himself. Another guy making a name for himself is another guy that I was looking out for, K'Lavon Chaisson. Up to 5 sacks now on the season. And again, 44 just keeps showing up. I mean, he is really impressing me. And again, he's going to be, a free agent when the season's over. I asked him in the locker room after the Jaguars victory if he wants to remain with the Raiders and he'd like to call Vegas home. And he said, absolutely. But that's obviously something they got to worry about in the offseason. But the way he's playing, he's cooking with grease right now. It seems like he's getting better and better and better. Now all he's got to do is finish off the season strong next week against the Chargers. But he's up to 5 sacks. He's a disruptive force. He's long. There's a reason why the Jaguars made him a first-round pick. And I don't know if this is going to happen for Tyree Wilson, that he's going to have the slow development like Chaisson. But think about this. Chaisson's been in the league, 4 or 5 years now? And now it's starting to click for him. So that just sometimes that's how it happens. Sometimes it just doesn't work right away. It doesn't click right away, or maybe it doesn't work at the team that drafted you. And then when you go somewhere else, you get picked up and you do a really good job and you start fitting in really well. And I guess it's also humbling, right, to be a former first round pick and then get released. It's a pretty humbling situation, and you realize that you better be on your A game when you get your second opportunity. And he's making the most of his opportunity. Jack Jones came up with a deflection interception. That's 3 interceptions now on the season. And, the funny thing is watching Jack, and I was happy for him because I felt like he needed to have a big game. He had been getting hit with the double moves quite often, and he was falling for it. But he comes up with a ball that was deflected off of a Saints receiver's hands, and he comes up with the interception. And then he, jumps up, and he starts, shouting to AP and shouting to the sideline. And the coach, Rob Leonard, got to give Robbie Leonard a lot of credit, the defensive line coach. He's like, Jack, go. And that's exactly what I was saying when I watched the play happen. I was like, man, you can get up and run. Nobody touched you, and you didn't go out of bounds. And he really could have, and he didn't realize it, and he just kind of walked out of bounds on his own and, was celebrating with Antonio Pierce and others. But I was like, go, Jack. You can get up and run. And that's the thing that he does best, right? When he's got the ball in his hands, he's able to make some things happen. He always wants to get to the house. So that was an opportunity missed there, but I was glad that he was able to come up with that interception. He hasn't had the season that I thought he was going to have. I'm sure he hasn't had the season that he thought he was going to have. But again, just like all these guys, they're finishing off really strong. And for the most part, man, the defense played really well. And I know it was a backup quarterback, Spencer Rattler, a rookie, no Alvin Kamara, no Chris Olave. They had a ton of injuries. I get it. They've got an interim coach. I get all that. So I'm not acting like they just knocked off the Super Bowl champs. But again, for the way that they went out there and performed and the way that they put their will on the Saints, I thought they did a hell of a job. And those guys that I pointed out in particular really did. Again, 4 sacks, 2 interceptions on the day. Jack Jones, Thomas Harper both come up with interceptions. Harper actually had a sack too, or half a sack. Robert Spillane and Chason both had a sack each. And then Tyree Wilson, Thomas Harper, Adam Butler, and Andre Carter, the two, they all had a half a sack as well. So 4 times they get to the quarterback. They turned the ball over a couple times. And offensively, the Raiders did not turn the ball over at all. That is so stinking important. When they don't turn the ball over, there's a good chance they can win games. But what's on your minds? I know there's a lot of feedback that we got, so we'll get to your calls and texts. We'll do it next at 707-654-4693. Here we go, Raider Nation. Segment number 3 of today's Locked On Raiders podcast. Your calls and texts straight off that Locked On Raider podcast voicemail line, 707-654-4693. Let's start things off with a text from Tran702. Say, hey, what up, Q? It's Tran702. Just wanted to give a shout out to Raider Nation in section 124 above the Raiders tunnel. We were loud and we were proud. We didn't give a damn about a draft pick. We wanted that dub. Let's go, Raiders. That's from Tran702. And, oh, yeah, by the way, with the Raiders' victory on Sunday, they go from being, at one point they were number 2 overall as far as picking. Then they dropped to number 6. With that win on Sunday, they go to number 8. And the Giants, they messed around and won on Sunday as well. So, so that just, again, goes back to the point of the players, coaches, they don't care about a draft pick. They want to go out there and they want to go ball out. But glad that Raider Nation traveled well. I actually did an interview with a young lady, Aaron Summers, as a matter of fact. She does reporting for the Saints. And she said, how does Raider Nation travel? And I was like, oh, Raider Nation travels. They're going to be there. Matter of fact, they're there right there. I did the interview on Friday. I was like, man, they're already there, right? And if they're not there, they're on their own way, right? They'll take over Bourbon Street. Yeah, Raider Nation is gonna show up and show out. So I'm glad that you guys had a really good time and represented right in front of above the Raiders tunnel. I'm sure the players really did appreciate that. Matter of fact, the players should have been on the plane ride that the other folks took to get there early because they didn't get there until Sunday morning. Thanks for that text, so I do appreciate you. Up next, got a call from Ryan from Riverside. He's calling to talk about the Raiders as a team, who he's excited about, and let's just say it like this. He's pretty fired up. Here's Ryan from Riverside.
Hey, Q, man. This is Ryan from Riverside. I don't have a cool Raider name or anything, but, this team is legit, dude. Like, you're sleeping on them. You are sleeping on them. They're playing together. I love the enthusiasm. You're sleeping on defensive player 53 Gainer, dude. JPJ, these are our guys. The Raiders were built on nobodies, man. Come on. They were playing together. AP, I'm with you, dude. I'm with you. This is one of my dudes, but he hasn't showed me, but I'll give him another year. But now we got Brock Bowers. We got a bunch of nobodies, and these guys are still playing together. I hate listening to all these people talking on our team and this negativity. This is a Raider team. You need to believe this. Come on. This is what we do. We are nobodies who succeed. Like, it's beautiful. Love the show. First time listener, first time or caller, whatever this nonsense is. But, you know, love the show. Always. Raider till I die.
Ryan, thanks for the call. I appreciate you. I appreciate the energy. I'm not sure who's sleeping on the Raiders. I'm not sure who you're talking about when you're saying that the Raiders are being slept on. Obviously, it's been a super disappointing season, only having 4 wins, and this is the first time that they've gone on a winning streak all season long. But I think everyone in Raider Nation, and I know myself, have given them nothing but props for fighting, scratching, clawing, giving their 100% effort each and every game. There's teams out there that could have mailed it in. Right. So, I don't know who's sleeping on the team. And, you say that they're a team full of nobodies. There's not a nobodies. They got a lot of talent. Brock Bowers ain't no nobody. Jacoby Myers ain't a nobody. Right. I mean, they got talent. Robert Spillane ain't a nobody. Right. I mean, these guys can get after it. There's plenty of talent on that team. K'Lavon Chason, Tyree Wilson. I mean, there's plenty of talent. Amir Abdullah's been in the league 10 years. Right. So I wouldn't say that there's a team full of nobodies, but I will say, and I agree with you 100%, that they're giving all the effort in the world. They just, just wasn't able to manufacture very many wins this year. That's it. But I think you're wrong when you say that people are sleeping on the Raiders. I don't think anyone's sleeping. I think we all know what it is. It's a disappointing season, but effort has never been a question. So there's that. But Ryan, thanks for the call. I do appreciate you. And you can't be cussing, man. My mama listens to the show. It's a family show, right? You got to make me do extra work, man. If you're cussing, you can't be cussing. But thanks for the call anyway. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a text from Bipolar Raider. Q, I've seen enough. I've seen enough of Amir Abdullah. I've seen enough of Trayvon Merrick. I've seen enough of Robert Spillane. Bring them back. We praise Tom Telesco for everything he did in this last draft, but I believe he fumbled a ball on who to re-sign. Let's keep pushing forward, not worry about lottery ticket, draft pick. Go Raiders. That's from Bipolar Raider. And yeah, he hasn't started to bring back anybody yet, right? And so, I mean, the only thing he didn't obviously bring back in 2024 was Josh Jacobs. That was the one guy that he did let get out of the building that, I kind of felt it at the combine. He was going to let him go when he said that it wasn't a one back league anymore. It was really running back by committee. So that was the case with Josh Jacobs. But outside of that, I mean, he didn't sign too many free agents at all. If you remember, I mean, early on in free agency, it was really Christian Wilkins, Gardner Minshew, and Alexander Madison. And then, of course, other pieces here and there. I think he's done a pretty good job, and he's got a lot of work cut out for him this offseason to decide who he is bringing back. That's why when people say these games are meaningless, I try to tell people all the time these games are everything but meaningless. There's a ton of meaning. It might not mean much to you, and that's fine. I respect that. But these games are not meaningless. These games mean something to those guys that are on the field, the guys that are coaching them, the guys in the front office, and the owner. Mark Davis. These games are not meaningless to anybody that's involved with the team. Like I said, depending on what you're looking at and how you're looking at the season, they could be meaningless to a fan, and that's fine. I get that. But, these things are far from meaningless. But thanks for the text. I do appreciate you. Up next, got a quick call from Cisco Kid in 209. He's calling to talk about the performance of Aiden O'Connell and how that relates to April's draft. Here's Cisco Kid.
Q, top of the morning, Raider Nation, top of the morning. This your boy Cisco Kid 209. Just want to call in and with a quick fact. Hey, I just want to say, Raider Nation, AOC looked pretty decent. I know it's the Saints and everything, but Kid was cooking up quite a little bit. So I'm just saying, whatever draft order we get, I believe we should just get our top player and just keep moving forward. Whether if it's AP or we got someone else, let's keep our heads up and just keep on grinding and putting in work. We got a dub and last one against the Chargers. So let's do the thing. You know what I'm saying? Raider Nation, let's have a good week, you have a good week, and just win, baby.
Thank you for the call, my man. I appreciate you. And, yeah, I mean, O'Connell's definitely played better, right? And that's why I'm glad that he was able to come back from that knee injury that he suffered against Tampa Bay. I thought his season was over. And then it was going to be kind of one of those situations of, well, he didn't really truly get evaluated in 2024, but now he's getting that opportunity. So I feel like by the end of the season, we should all have a really good idea of who he could be, right? I mean, and the one thing that I wanted to see him do was scan the field a lot more, go through his progressions, and he did that. It wasn't first read or check down as it normally has been. So I definitely thought that Aiden O'Connell definitely took a step forward on Sunday. I still believe that the Raiders need a franchise quarterback. I think that they need to draft one. Again, my preference is Shedeur Sanders, but I think Cam Ward is really stinking good too. Both guys I think would be really good. Now, don't look at Shedeur's Alamo Bowl performance. That was terrible. Don't look at Cam Ward not playing in the second half of his bowl game. That was questionable, but okay. But outside of that, I think both those guys could be really good quarterbacks. But again, that's just my preference, and I totally respect anyone who has a different feeling about that. But thanks so much for the call. I do appreciate you. Up next, and just got time for a couple more. Got a text from Brent in Boston. He says, "Hey Q, Brent from Boston checking in one more time before we say goodbye to 2024. And let me be the first to thank you for all you did this season for Raider Nation, because I knew it couldn't have been easy, and wishing you and your family a happy and healthy 2025. It's not in me to hope for a loss, so despite it probably being an unpopular opinion, I'm happy to see this team get a win. I am in the keep AP camp next season and play the cards you are dealt." Well done, camp. As far as the draft goes, partly because I'm not sold on any quarterbacks in the draft being a franchise quarterback for the next decade, and always want to go the best player available route. We have plenty of money to spend in free agency. I believe we should go all in on T. Higgins on the offensive side of the ball and try to get Javon Holland if the Finns let him leave. If Kirk Cousins leaves Atlanta in a similar contract situation like Russell Wilson did on his way out of Denver, then I say why not? Anyway, like I said, Happy New Year to you and the rest of Raider Nation. Go Raiders. That's Brent in Boston, and thank you so much for that. We do appreciate that. And yeah, I'm happy to see them get wins too, because I know how hard they work to get to the game day, and for them to come up short as many times they did this season, it's nice to see them get some W's, and you can see the smiles on their face. Again, Mark Davis was in the locker room on Sunday following the victory, and you saw him listening to the post game speech of Antonio Pierce. The Raiders actually put it out on their social media, and you can see Mark Davis, and that's part of the evaluation of the season as well. He's in the locker room talking to those players, and you think, what Mark Davis is doing? He's observing. He's observing to see how these players are continuing to react, to see the way that they, are getting pumped up by what they're doing, the goals that they're achieving on the field. So it's all there. And yeah, I mean, again, the Raiders dropped to number 8 overall as far as the draft pick goes. But you do the best you can, and you do whatever you have to feel like you have to do. Tom Telesco, that's why he gets paid, and they'll have to figure it out moving forward. And obviously, there's a lot of different people that'll go into that conversation as well. We'll close out with a call from Eric from Oakland. He's calling to say thank God, and gives his reasons why. Here he is, Eric in Oakland.
Yo, what's up, Q? This is Eric from Oakland, California, the Tisdown calling. Man, all I can say is thank God. Thank God. Thank God. You see that little tweet that Shedeur Sanders are always putting out after a Raiders win and all that, controversy about him tweeting? Well, hey, another Raiders win. Thank God, right? Because to be honest with you, that man right there is not worth a top 5 pick. Sorry, hate to break it to you guys, but that guy's not worth a top 5 pick. The quarterback class this year is really bad. I wouldn't say it's really bad, but I would just say it's not worth top 5 picks. You know what I mean? So for the Raiders, if they landed the first overall pick or the second or the third, I don't know how I would feel about them wasting a top 3 or top 2 pick on one of these quarterbacks, because they just ain't it, man. Who knows? Maybe the Raiders might end up trading up, which I doubt it, because Tom Telesco has never traded up in the draft to go pick up a prospect. But man, all I can say is thank God, man. I would hate the Raiders to be in that position on the top 5 pick, to have the pressure to go and pick up one of these quarterbacks. Honestly, look at my guy, AOC. He's looking amazing. And if Antonio Pierce made the right decision in the beginning of the year to start Aiden O'Connell, we would have had a much better year. That goes to show you and tell you that this guy doesn't make the right decisions. He's a rookie coach, man. It is what it is. I hope he learned his lesson this one. I mean, you're supposed to ride with AOC. Look how well he's playing. Obviously, the offensive coordinator from the beginning of the year wasn't that great. This guy is much better. Him and North Turner, they're killing it. But AOC, man, I don't know why you don't see something special in AOC. AOC looks really, really good. If he has a really solid line and offensive play caller, this guy could potentially be a decent starting quarterback in the league. Look at the way he's playing. I mean, that's just my 2 cents on there, man. But like I said, put that on Twitter. Thank God, another Raiders win. All right, Q. Keep doing your thing. Much love.
Eric, thanks for the call. Appreciate you as always. And yeah, you're right. The draft class is not great for quarterbacks. Cam Ward and Shador Sanders are the top two prospects, but, that could also change in the draft during the process, the combine and, pro days and all that other stuff that, how quickly that changes. So that conversation could change. As far as AP, naming Minshew the starter, I talked about that earlier in the show. I can't guarantee that the season would be different. Aiden O'Connell's missed time due to injury twice. So who's to say that he wouldn't have missed other time if he had started, right? There's so many things. It's so easy to go back and say, well, if this had happened and that had happened, and you really can't do that, right? If he had started the season, maybe they would have won a couple more games. Maybe they wouldn't have, right? Who knows? And again, he would have had Luke Getsy's offensive coordinator, the play calling from him, which was not good at all. So I don't know if anyone was going to be really to be the guy. And again, I don't know how much the front office and how much the guaranteed money that Minshew was making had to do with him playing as well. I do think that some of that was a financial decision. But then you mentioned O'Connell could potentially be a decent starter. So I want to close out with this. A decent starter. In the AFC West, is a decent starter going to get it done? You got Mahomes twice. You got Herbert twice. And I don't know if you watched Denver on Saturday, but you got Nix twice. And Nix looks really good. I was obviously wrong about him. I didn't think he was going to be that great of an NFL quarterback. He looks really stinking good. And he gave Denver an opportunity to potentially win that game on Saturday. They came up a little bit short, but man, he sure did give them an opportunity. So I ask you again, is a potentially decent starting quarterback what you're going to need in the AFC West, or are you going to need someone that you feel like is really good, that if the team needs him to put him be put on his shoulders and on his arm, they can do that, right? That's the thing. You got to think about who the Raiders have to play just twice a year, their own division. That's why I don't think that, a potentially decent starter is what you need. I think you need a lot more. Now, again, like you said, you're not a big fan of Shador or this draft class, so maybe you don't think that you can get that guy, and so Aiden O'Connell might end up being the starting quarterback in 2025. That's all, a conversation for another day. It could end up being a Kirk Cousins situation, could be a, Sam Darnold situation. There's a lot of different scenarios that could go into play, and we'll just have to let it play out. But the offseason will come soon enough for the Silver and Black. One more week, one more game. Got the Chargers coming up this weekend, and then it's game, set, match, and we'll see where the offseason takes us. But that's going to do it for today's show. Definitely appreciate all the feedback. I got a text from Raider Rollins that I'll get to tomorrow. Got a couple other calls as well. We'll have more, conversation about this team moving forward. We'll get into some more Max Crosby conversation, and, Antonio Pierce, as the, rumor mill will continue to turn throughout the week leading into the last game of the season. So until tomorrow, Raider Nation, take care of yourself, take care of your family, love on your family. Most importantly, as always, just win, baby.